This week, the HPT visits the Southern California desert at the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa in Rancho Mirage, just outside of Palm Springs. This playground for the stars is now host to one of HPT's premier events, and our inaugural stop generated a prize pool worth just under $400,000, with over $90,000 waiting for the last player standing. The tour that was designed for everybody to play saw everybody here in California's Palm Desert. Life-changing money and the championship is on the line as we get the cards in the air here in Agua Caliente.
This is the HPT.
Sit right down, put on your poker face, you with the big dogs now. Better bring your best game, talk trash all you want. To me it's all the same, you won't leave with much when you come in second place. And I'm the one with the stack showing 7 to the jack. Gon' cry to your mama cause I'm sending you back. I'll be the last man standing with the money in my hand. I'll be the last man standing with the money in my hand. Last man standing with the money in my hand. I'll be the last man standing with the money in my hand.
Hello everyone, and welcome again to the HPT. This week we're coming to you from one of our new tour stops, the Agua Caliente Casino Resort here in Rancho Mirage, California, just outside of Palm Springs. I'm Fred Bevel, this is Maria Ho, and Maria, Palm Springs, Agua Caliente, great weather, first class service, awesome hotel rooms. I'm moving here. My new address is Agua Caliente, room 503.
I think you'll have a lot of neighbors, Fred. This place is awesome on every level. Hundreds of players joined us here in the California desert, building a prize pool worth over $375,000. Over $90,000 of that will be awarded to our next HPT champion. But this week's last player standing will have to bring their A game because there's a ton of talent among this final 9.
2 of the final 9 have HPT final table experience. Dan Heimiller is making his second final table with us. He finished 8th place at our Colorado event earlier this season. And joining him is Tret Nguyen. Tret is making his 3rd final table with a 2nd and a 7th place finish from our event in Fresno, California, just about 6 hours north of here.
3 of the players are accomplished young professionals in the game, while talented and skilled amateurs round out the rest of this week's final table. I'm expecting some daring plays and exciting action as we play down to a champ.
Well, let's not keep people waiting any longer. Let's take a look at the money on the line, the starting chip counts, then get right to the action.
It's a great prize pool that these final 9 are playing for today. First place is going to take home over $90,000. Second place, $55,607, and our 9th place finisher is going to walk away with $9,769.
Here is the starting chip count at tonight's final table.
We got the Chris's on top of the chip counts here. Chris Karambanis has the chip lead with $1.6 million. Chris DeMacy follows closely behind him, and as you can see, it goes all the way down to our shortest stack, Ron Hauser, with 8 big blinds.
Blinds are starting off at this final table at $12,000 and $24,000 with a $3,000 chip ante. And it looks like we're going to begin in the 8th seat, which belongs to Stanislav Parshak. He's going to fold. That was Larry Kinsey, who folded in the 1 seat. This is Chris DeMacy. He's going to raise it up to $53,000 with a suited King-Jack.
Chris looking sharp there with his hair done. I've played with Chris many times on the circuit, and, usually his hair is just a little more disheveled than it is today.
To his immediate left is Lily Coletto, and it looks like Lily is going to call here with pocket aces. What a great hand to wake up to when you start a final table.
She's going to slow play here. I like the fact that she's just going to smooth call.
And this is Dan Heimiller, professional poker player. We've seen Dan a few times here on the HPT. He's going to go ahead and call with pocket 6s. So Lily getting a little too much traffic with pocket aces.
Yeah, I think she flatted here to disguise the strength of her hand and to also maybe hope for somebody to squeeze behind her. But unfortunately, it looks like she's just going to get this pot multi-way with aces.
So she's going to go to the flop 3-handed with her pocket aces. So not a whole lot of traffic. She's lucky, though. Here's our first flop of this week's final table.
And the flop is 3 deuces. And you know what? You can't really ask for a better flop if you were Lily. And she's decided to slow play this hand pre-flop, and she should just continue to slow play post-flop. She's not afraid of anything. Very unlikely that Chris opened an early position with a deuce in his hand, and obviously Dan as well. She knows that she has the best boat possible, so she's just looking to trap people and to get a little more value.
Well, she's definitely on the right road to a big pot here. She's just going to flat call Chris's continuation bet. And now it's Dan Heimiller with the sixes.
And that's a really good fold from Dan, actually. I think he realizes something is up here, and he decides that he doesn't want to try to commit more chips with his sixes when he was just trying to set mine.
The turn is the queen of spades. And Chris is going to continue the aggression, this time a bet of 210,000. And Lily's got to just be dancing in her head right now.
And I love the show she's putting on, looking at Chris, pretending like she wants to get a read from him when she knows dang well she's got the best of it here. And I like it, and I hope to see her just call and continue this charade. Chris is very aggressive from the times I've played with him, so I imagine that he's going to try to fire three, especially if she shows some hesitation in calling here. And I think Lily has somewhat of an aggressive image as well, so I think that might bode well for her. But the river is the six, and Chris decides to check and not fire three barrels. And Lily moves all in, and Chris quickly folds.
Wait, let me see that.
And she decides that she wants to show her hand.
So the first hand of the day belongs to Lily Coletto with pocket aces. More poker from the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Hotel and Spa when we come back.
Welcome back to the HPT. We're outside the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa. And I got to say, folks, I've been on the road with the HPT for 5 years. This place is absolutely phenomenal. The rooms are beautiful, great poker action, and we have eaten well all week long. Freddie, I know you and I have shared many meals together, and I'm really excited to come back here. We'll send it over to you guys for more final table action.
We have 4 players, all with 1 million chips or more, but leading the way is Chris Karambanis with 1.6 million. We've got a few stacks with under 20 big blinds, but the shortest stack of them all belongs to Ron Hauser.
Ron with just 6 big blinds in his stack. Maria, we've seen players in this spot before. Not a lot of poker left in their chip stack. They're pretty much just going to have to find a spot and hope. Blinds are moving up. They're now 15 and 30,000 with a 4,000 chip ante. And things in this hand start with Chris. He's going to fold. And behind him, the other Chris at the table folds. Dan with ace-queen offsuit's going to raise it to 80,000.
I'm surprised to see Dan not in his usual colorful outfits. He's just got a shirt that says winner, winner, chicken dinner. But usually, you see him around with his really fabulous colors.
Dan's been in the game of poker for decades. Actually got turned on to the HPT through our current player of the year, Alan Kessler.
And Tritt with 10s and somewhat of a short stack with 16 big blinds moves all in.
Action now on Larry Kinsey in the 1 seat. So we're back to Dan Heimiller. Another 397,000 to call.
And although that's a lot of Dan's stack, considering he only has 24 big blinds, I kind of feel like his hand is a little bit too strong to raise fold, especially against Tritt.
The call has been made, ladies and gentlemen.
He does make the call, and he sees he's behind, but with 2 live cards, I'm sure this is exactly what Dan was expecting. A little over 1 million chips in this pot.
The flop is 5-4-6 rainbow. Not the flop that Dan was looking for. He still needs an ace or a queen in order to knock Tritt out.
Tritt Nguyen has a 2nd place finish from Fresno and a 7th place finish from Fresno.
The turn is the 8 of spades. Now if a 7 comes off on the river, they're going to chop with the straight. Otherwise, Dan's going to need an ace or a queen, or Tritt's going to double up.
The river is the jack of diamonds, and that is going to seal the deal for Tritt. He is going to double up to a little over 1 million in chips.
And that's going to knock Dan down to 8 big blinds. So that was a very important race that Dan was hoping to win.
You got to win the flips in this game, don't you?
Absolutely. There's no way to win a tournament without winning a few flips along the way.
Action in this hand moves over to Ron Hauser, the elder statesman at the final table. He's going to fold. Now over to Mark Jones. Mark is the Jack Nicholson look-alike at this final table. He's going to lay down his connectors. Stanislav is going to fold. Back to Trait now. He lays it down over to Larry Kenzie. And now it's Chris DeMacy's decision.
Chris DeMacy in the small blind decides to raise to 80,000 with Queen 6 offsuit.
And now action moves over to Lily Coletto. Lily's boyfriend, James Calderaro, is also an HPT Final Table alumni. He made the final table from our event in Florida.
Lily makes the call with King 6 from the big blind.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Lily makes the call, so we have exactly.
So heads up, again, Lily and Chris. The flop is 8, Queen 10 with a couple of clubs.
And Chris has out-flopped Lily, flopping top pair here. Lily doesn't have much except a backdoor flush draw.
121.
Chris bets 121,000, and you know, that's not really the texture of flop that I would want to be floating with. I think that hits a lot of Chris's raising range pre-flop. Granted, Chris is going to raise a huge percentage of his hands in a blind versus blind situation, but, you know, you can't really expect to turn much with your King 6 there.
Lily is going to float him on the flop, and a 9 of hearts comes on the turn.
And that might slow Chris down a whole lot as a jack makes a straight. And I think Lily is going to take this opportunity to bet.
Lily Coletto showing some moxie here as she's getting ready to bluff on the scare card.
And that's definitely the kind of turn that you want to bluff at if you did float the flop.
She makes it 165,000. So now Chris with top pair is going to make the call.
And I think the real defining moment will be on the river, but with the jack on the river, now Lily has rivered a higher straight. So this might be a really good spot where Chris is going to think Lily's betting to try to get him off a chop, but except Lily has the better straight here.
Lily is going to bet 300,000. Not an easy call for Chris to make, though, is it, Maria?
No, not at all. And most good players know that you don't really call to chop usually on the river. It's not usually a winning play.
Chris is going to lay it down, and smartly so. So Lily, 2 for 2 against Chris. I have a feeling these two are going to lock horns a lot at this final table.
It doesn't seem like any of these players want to give up on this title too easily. Come back for more action.
Thanks for coming back to the HPT. I'm Fred Bevel. This is Maria Ho, and we are at the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa just outside of sunny Palm Springs. Let's get right back to the action.
Chris Karambanis still has the chip lead with 1.7 million, but Lily's been moving up. Now she's in the second spot at 1.6 million. We got a couple of short stacks here. Both Dan and Ron have short stacks with 6 and 5 big blinds respectively.
Over $90,000 waiting up top for the last player standing from this final table, as blinds continue at 15 and 30,000 with a 4,000 chip ante. And Mark Jones will be under the gun, and he is going to have to lay it down over to Stanislav, who wins the Coolest Name Award from this final table. He's going to raise it to 60,000 with suited connectors. Trait's going to fold. Now Larry Kinsey. He's going to fold. Now Mr. Chris DeMacy again. Maria, you said you've seen Chris around the circuit. What's his play like?
Yeah, I've played with Chris several times throughout the years, and from what I know of his game, I think he's an aggressive, solid player.
Lily and Chris are going to fold, so we're over to Dan Highmiller, one of the short stacks.
And Dan doesn't have any fold equity with his 6 big blinds against Stanislav's raise here, so I think he's just making sure he has a good enough hand to go with.
And ace 4 is good enough in Dan's book. He has gone all in. And now action back over to Stanislav, and it's only $124,000 for him to make the call, and he easily does.
And Dan's going to see that he's just slightly ahead here.
The flop is 6, ace, 8, rainbow. That's a good flop for Dan Heimiller. He's hit top pair.
Stanislav does have a gut shot, though.
You should know better.
You guys want the news or not?
It's never easy. The turn is the 8 of clubs, so no help to Stanislav. He's going to need a 7 on the river to knock Dan out. Otherwise, Dan is going to double up.
On to the river we go. It is the 5 of clubs, so Dan Heimiller is going to double up here. He's still one of the short stacks, but Maria, a little more room to play.
And I think Dan was smart knowing that he just wanted to take his equity there with ace 4 suited. It's not the best hand when you're facing a raise, but you really had no choice but to go with it.
Time now for a poker life featuring legendary pro player Doyle Brunson. Now, you talk about a man that's lived a life. Doyle is turning 80 years old as we speak, and he's got a lot of life in that 80 years. You know, they say behind every great man is a better woman. Mr. Brunson would agree, as his beautiful wife Louise has been with him almost every step of the way. Enjoy.
Louise is an unbelievable parent. I mean, they have super moms and so forth. Well, she would absolutely qualify as a super mom. And like you say, all the kids in the neighborhood came to our house. We actually moved 2 children in with us that were homeless, and we raised them. And she just has a loving spirit and is so compassionate toward things. I mean, she's 1 in a million. She's done all kinds of community service. She's a devout Christian. She does church work. She sent tapes to prisons, Christian tapes and music. She's just a real homebody that stayed home. And that actually she started dealing in real estate and got rich while she was doing it. I never made a right move. She never made a wrong move. I lost everything I did outside of gambling, and her timing was impeccable, selling and buying real estate, and she did very well.
Thank you very much, Doyle. Maria, I think you of all people would agree that behind every good man there is a better woman. Proof is in the pudding. Doyle's a pretty good guy. More poker when we come back at the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa. Thanks for coming back to the HPT. This week we're at the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa just outside of Palm Springs. Let's get right back to the action.
There's been some movement in the chip counts, mainly in the middle spots. Chris and Lily still 1 and 2, but Mark and Stanislav basically neck and neck after tangling in that last hand. And Ron is still the short stack with 7 big blinds.
Still waiting for our first elimination here at this final table as we continue on at 15 and 30,000 with a 4,000 chip ante.
We won't listen. We won't listen.
It's Dan Heimiller under the gun this hand. He peels back mom and dad.
And Dan's got a little bit of a dilemma here. He's got 16 big blinds. I think it's too much to just open shove that 9-handed from under the gun. I think King Queen is a pretty good hand, and he does still have some raised folds off his stack size, so maybe I would go with that. I think open folding is fine as well, but when he raises here off of 16 big blinds, it actually makes his hand look really strong, and you can expect that no one's going to be 3-betting him light, so it's just about whether or not this raise is going to get through.
Action folding all the way around the table. We're now on the 1 seat of Larry Kinsey. Larry's been pretty quiet so far. And now over to Chris DeMacy, who hasn't been so quiet at this final table. He's been fairly active. He's going to take this hand off. And now over to Lily Coletto.
And I hope Lily is recognizing off of Dan's stack size. She probably doesn't want to call from the small blind here, but she does.
And Chris Karambanis is also going to call.
And I think Dan was really hoping that it would just get through, the blinds would fold, and he'd pick up those and the antes, but he's going to see a flop 3 ways in position with the best hand.
And it just got a little bit better. The flop comes King 8, King Rainbow, so Heimiller has flopped trip kings.
And I think unless Dan decides to just check back here, he's probably going to just win this pot with a C-bet.
Lily checks. Chris checks. Now, Dan takes a second look.
And I think Dan's wondering, will it look really sneaky if he checks back this kind of flop? Will people just realize that he probably has a huge hand here because he's probably going to C-bet most times? And I think he decides to check back, and I can't decide if I like that or not. The truth is, I think if he checks back, they're still going to feel like he's fairly strong, but if he bets, they're still going to feel like he's fairly strong. So I think checking back is the only way for Dan to get value, but he doesn't really know that.
Well, here on the turn, after the 2 of spades falls, Lily is going to fire. She makes it $125,000. And Lily might be bluffing from the worst position of the 3, being first to act.
Yeah, but I think that might be what makes it believable as well, because when you do bluff from the worst position and you have 2 people to get through instead of 1, sometimes people give you more credit for a stronger hand. But in this case, Dan obviously has the best of it and he knows it, and I would assume he's just going to call here.
You are correct. So onto the river we go as the pot swells to a little over $500,000.
And I think if I were Lily, I would probably just shut down on the river, especially the river pairing the deuce. I don't think there's many hands that could get Dan off of the way Dan's played it. But Lily does put them all in, and Dan's going to quickly call.
Dan is going to table the full house, and Maria, it's tough to bluff into the nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely hard to represent the hand that your opponent is actually holding. And I just think that Lily didn't pick a great time there to bluff. I think in some other situations that probably would have worked, but I think the way Dan played that hand, I would have gotten some red flags that he was very strong there.
Blinds are moving up to 20 and 40,000 with a 5,000 chip ante, and Dan Heimiller, who was once one of the short stacks, is now among the bigger stacks after a couple of double-ups. And Lily Coletto, even though she just doubled up Dan's, her chip stack is still very healthy. Action, this hand is being folded around the table. It's up to Mark Jones now, who looks down at pocket queens.
And Mark has 23 big blinds, so he's definitely hoping for a lot of action here with his queens. And I think when he picks up queens from a position like the button, for instance, it's going to get a lot less credit for being as strong as it actually is, which, you know, Stanislav is going to take advantage of that and move all in with King 10 of diamonds there with his 18 big blind stack. So this is a really great spot for Mark to be in. Well, Mark is going to make the call with queens. And Stanislav is going to have his tournament life at risk here. He's looking for a flush or a king.
So Mark looking to score the first knockout here at this final table. He's in a good spot to do it, but Stanislav not out of it yet. Here comes the flop.
The flop is Jack 6 Ace. A ton of outs for Stanislav. He's flopped a flush draw, a gut shot straight draw, but he's going to need one of Mark's queens to do so. But he also has the king as well.
Mark hoping to fade all of these outs that Stanislav has. The turn is the ace of spades, so he fades one street. One street left to go.
It's about as big of a brick as you could ask for on the turn. Now he's just hoping that one more brick rolls off on the river and we'll have our 9th place finisher in Stanislav Barshak.
The river is the 4 of spades, and Mark's queens hold. And unfortunately, we do have to say goodnight to Stanislav Barshak. He's going to go home with just under $9,800 for his efforts here at the HPT this weekend. Eight-handed poker will begin when we come back here on the HPT. Thanks for coming back to the HPT. Over $90,000 is waiting for one of these players remaining. Let's get right back to the action.
Mark Jones, with the elimination of Stanislav, has become our new chip leader, but Chris Karambanis is right on his heels. Dan Heimiller has made a really tremendous comeback to $1.5 million in chips. And from Trit on down to Ron, everybody's got 16 big blinds or less.
The next elimination will go home with just under $12,000, but it's that $90,000 that everybody's gunning for as blinds continue on at 20 and 40,000. with a 5,000 chip ante. Ron Hauser here is under the gun, and he's going to go all in with ace queen.
Ron's been waiting to pick up a good hand to move all in with, and 9 big blinds with ace queen, definitely worthy of shoving.
And now the action slides to his left, where Mark Jones is sitting.
Deuces aren't wild. Oh my God.
Mark is going to lay it down, so now we're over to Tret. Tret folds, so Larry Kenzie here in the 1 seat. We've yet to see Larry splash around.
Oh, did you want to count?
I don't really know why Larry's asking for a count here. There's still people behind him. And Larry's only got 15 big blinds to queen 8 of hearts. I don't think that's even close to being good enough to consider calling Ron's under the gun shove with 9 bigs.
Just on the middle pin. Just a little one. What are you playing? He's got 4.
Kind of interesting, the kind of hands that people kind of get attached to.
I had it counted out.
Same thing here. 372 is the all-in.
I think suited connected cards always look better than they actually are, given the situation.
All right, so Larry's got the count, and now he's going to fold his rag hand. Over to Chris now. And now Lily.
Well, I haven't looked yet.
And now action's folded to Dan Highmiller, who wakes up with jacks in the big blind. So Ron is going to definitely get some action here.
Call.
He makes the call. We flip them over, folks.
Wow.
Oh my God. We flip over the cards. Dan Highmiller in the 5 seat. He's ahead. He's going to flip over 2 jacks. 1 red in hearts and 1 black in the club.
So the rush of cards continues for Dan. And the flop is 4-3-3 with a couple of diamonds.
Safe flop for jacks. Ron is looking for an ace or a queen or running diamonds. Otherwise, he will be our 8th place finisher.
Highmiller is running white hot right now. Let's see if it continues. The turn is the 5 of spades, so the jacks survive another street.
That does add some more outs for Ron, though. If he hits a 2 on the river, he's actually going to make the wheel.
10. Just bet the pot. 10 cards.
Got 10 outs.
Chop the pot.
Poker would be so much easier if there was just no river card, but there is.
We don't have to see the last one.
And Dan has to sweat through it to see if he is going to eliminate Ron or double him up. Here is the river.
The river is the deuce, giving Ron the wheel. You can see he's pretty happy about that. He is going to survive, and now he has 18 big blinds after this hand.
It couldn't even be the ace or the queen. It's got to be running straight outs for Ron to suck out here.
Honestly, it's the run out that tilts people. You know what I mean? It's like you go into it in a flip and you're fine with it, but then you see this kind of run out and you're like, well, why didn't he just flop an ace or a queen on the flop so I don't have to feel like I was going to win this hand by the turn?
So Dan Highmiller has doubled up a couple of times. This time he returns the favor to Ron Hauser. Just a flesh wound for Dan. He has really chipped up since being one of the bottom stacks when we started. Every week, we like to highlight a player from our field of hundreds. This week, we chose professional poker player Kenna James. Here he talks about his championship run with us earlier in the season with Card Player Cruises, as well as his outlook on poker as a sport.
I've always played well on a cruise. I love the whole ambiance of it, and plus you get all the suckers trapped on the ship and they can't get off. But I was actually the sucker because I bought in 5 different times. There's a multiple entry, and where was I going to go? So I just had to go to my pocket, rebuy, and then eventually, you know, it's kind of interesting because things turn around. Eventually, you know, you keep running into a wall enough times, you break through, and that's what happened on the cruise ship. And I got kind of emotional, was to just break through that and actually realize, you know, your dream for that moment and embrace that moment, and not just toss it off. Well, okay, on to the next one, but. I think it's very important that we're in a sport where you suffer a lot of loss. You better celebrate the victories, you know, to balance it out. And I allowed myself that moment to just really experience it emotionally. And so that's for me what it was just to allow myself to win.
I get a lot of support.
I really do. Thank you. Thanks, God.
Those things that you really enjoy and love to do, you got to get interested in it. Interested enough to study the game and study what you do and build your skill set. Because this is a challenge of values, really. You know, my values against your values. Do I have the best hand? Do you have the best hand? And you have determination. So it's developing skills like hand reading and betting and all those things. But beyond that, it takes traits of observation and discipline and patience and perseverance and endurance. Those things you can't really study in a book. You've got to cultivate them within yourself. And then realize that this game, if you allow it, will speak to you and point flaws in your game. So be self-critical about that and go and build yourself. And if you're really interested in doing that and apply yourself, you too can come out a champion. Hey everybody, it's Kenna James and you're watching the HPT.
Thanks for coming back to the HPT. This is Maria Ho. My name is Fred Bevel. Let's get right back to this fun final table.
And Dan Highmiller from the outhouse of the penthouse, as they say, he's in the chip lead position with 1.88 million. But just a few chips shy of him is Mark Jones with 1.86 million. Chris Karambinis is still carrying on a strong stack from the start of this tournament. And our short stacks are Trit, Larry, and Chris. They've all got about 11 big blinds or less.
Blinds are going up. They're now 25 and 50,000 with a 5,000 chip ante. And Ron Hauser is under the gun. He's going to fold.
Trit wakes up with pocket queens with 11 big blinds. That's a great hand to pick up on that short of a stack. And he decides to raise to 125,000, hoping to reel somebody in. And Trit's playing a little tighter than we've seen at final tables past, but you know, he's definitely recognizing that with his stack size, he's going to need to tighten up, and now he's picked up a really great hand, and his patience is being rewarded.
Well, Larry Kenzie is asking for a count again. This time he has ace-8 in his hand. And he folds over to Chris DeMacy. Chris started this final table among the leaders. Now he's on the other side of the ladder. Lily's going to fold. And now it's over to Chris Karambinis.
And he decides that he wants to commit Trit's remaining stack. Chris has pocket threes. And Trit's looking in great position to double up here.
Chris going to this flop, a 4-1 dog. The flop is Jack, Deuce, King. So now Trit's pocket queens looking real good.
Yep. He's only got to fade a 3 on the turn or the river in order to double up here. Once you fade somebody flopping a set on you on the flop, you should feel pretty good about your chances. The turn is the 10 of spades.
Chris, a 5% chance to eliminate Trait. On to the river we go.
It's a 4 of spades.
And the river is the 4 of spades. Close, but not it. And Trait is going to double up here.
And that's dangerous for everyone else at this final table. When Tret gets chips, he uses them. He's been quiet here as one of the shorter stacks. Now he's over $1 million. Blinds remain at 25 and 50,000 with a 5,000 chip ante. And Ron Hauser here will be under the gun. This was our inaugural visit to the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa, and what a fantastic property this is. These hotel rooms are amazing. The food is amazing. Huge pool. I'm told there's a gym. I couldn't find it. I know where all the bars are, though.
I believe that.
Larry Kenzie just cannot find a hand to play at this final table.
And it's just a bit of a waiting game for Larry and Chris and Lily in the 1, 2, 3 seat here. They've all got short shoving stacks here, so they're just really waiting to pick up a hand. And Lily with pocket 5s on the button and 14 big blinds, she knows that's good enough to put in the middle.
Chris, right to her left, looks down at King, Jack of clubs.
And Chris Karambinis in the small blind is thinking about making the call King Jack suited, and he does.
And he's going to fold. We rock and roll.
Dan folds his big blind.
Sammy Hagar flipped over for the 3 seat. 55, diamond spade.
So Lily's tournament life at risk, but she's going to the flop ahead.
Situation here. The 2 overs happen to be suited up in clubs.
50-50. Those are the winning percentages of these two players.
Big flip for her tournament life here. Ooh, 5 right in the window makes it easier for her to breathe a little as she flops a set. Chris is going to need running clubs or running straight outs.
Lily poised to go from almost out the door to just under $1.5 million in chips.
The turn brings huge backdoor possibilities for Chris. With the 10 of clubs on the turn, Chris just needs a club or a queen on the river to eliminate Lily.
He turned a club too.
A great sweat card here on the turn, creating some drama on the river. Is Chris going to snap the set and eliminate Lily, or is Lily going to double up? Here it comes.
The river is the deuce of hearts, and she does fade that backdoor draw of Chris's, and she's going to feel a little bit more comfortable now with about 30 big blinds.
So Lily is going to be dangerous yet again, as she's going to scoop a little under $1.5 million in chips after that double up via Chris Karambanis. Blinds remain at 25 and 50,000 with a 5,000 chip ante, and Lily here is under the gun. She's going to take this hand off, and Chris right next to her is going to go all in with Big Slick. Dan's going to fold. So now we're over to Ron Hauser. And now Mark Jones.
He also folds. So action's going to fold around to Larry Kenzie.
And you can see the frustration from Larry in the 1 seat as he's had to fold every hand this final table. That's got to be frustrating. Card dead at a final table.
And Chris DeMacy in the big blind, which is 17 big blinds, looks down at Jack 8 of clubs and is going to call. It's not much more for him to call here.
So Chris DeMacy behind but live. Chris Karambanis hoping to double up here and stay alive. Both of these players, young professionals.
They started out this final table 1 and 2 in the chip counts. Just goes to show you how quickly things can change. And the flop is Queen 10-9. And Chris DeMacy has flopped a straight here. But Chris Karambanis has the gut shot to the higher straight. He's going to need one of Chris DeMacy's jacks, though. There's 3 left in the deck.
The turn is the 3 of spades. No help to Chris Karambanis, as he is taking his microphone off right now. That's not a good attitude. The river is the queen of hearts, and unfortunately that does seal the deal for Chris Karambanis. He is going to go home in 8th place, cashing for a little under $12,000.
Another elimination at our HPT nationally televised final table. When we come back, we will have more exciting final table action. You're watching the HPT.
Thanks for coming back to the HPT. Over $90,000 is waiting for one of these players remaining. Let's get right back to the action.
Dan Highmiller enjoying his chip lead. Lily Coletto's in second. Trit and Mark pretty much tied for third. And the shortest stack with 9 big blinds is Larry Kenzie.
Yeah, poor Larry. We've been watching him all night here. Just fold, 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 fold. He hasn't had a hand to play yet. Maria, there are a few things more frustrating in the game of poker than being card dead and not being able to splash around.
Yeah, he hasn't really been able to get involved at all, but as people are getting eliminated, he's going to have to open up his shoving range some, I think.
A7 is the hand, and all in is the bet. So here we go. Larry Kenzie's first action of the night is going to put him possibly at risk of being eliminated. Chris and Lily fold. We're over to Dan now, who wakes up with pocket kings. And with a few players left behind, Dan is just going to call. He's not going to isolate.
That's definitely the play here for Dan.
Ron is going to lay it down. Now over to Mark Jones. You know, he either looks like Jack Nicholson or one of the original members of the Monkees.
Oh, good fold, good fold.
I haven't quite placed it.
I'm too young to know what you're talking about.
That's not right at all.
All right, and Larry's going to see he's got 1 overcard to Dan's kings here. Oh, He does not love it, but listen, I've seen an ace come many a times when it's up against kings.
There's a reason they're called ace magnets. Dan Heimiller hoping the kings hold through.
Flop is 3-5 queen, couple of spades. Larry hasn't found that ace he's looking for. Luckily for him, there's still 2 streets left. The turn is the 6 of spades. Now he has a gut shot straight draw along with the ace, but it can't be the spade because Dan has the king of spades in his hand.
Larry hoping to find a miracle on the river to save his tournament life. Otherwise, he will be our 7th place finisher. Here we go.
And the river is the 10 of diamonds. And unfortunately for Larry, his time is up here at this HPT final table. He's going to be our 7th place finisher.
Larry going to go home with just over $14,000. It's a frustrating day when you're card dead, but going to the cage to cash in 14 grand is going to feel pretty good. Dan Heimiller claims his 2nd knockout at this final table as the blinds go up to 30 and 60,000 with a 10,000 chip ante. Dan Heimiller is going to fold. We're over to Ron Hauser now, who doesn't have a whole lot of chips behind those cards.
And we saw Ron pass up a really great spot earlier with ace-jack of spades, and now he's going to have to put it in with ace-4. He's only got 6 big blinds, so who can blame him for getting it in here?
Mark Jones decides to fold, as does Trent. So we're going to move back over to Chris DeMacy. And now it's Lily Coletto.
How much is it?
And Lily is asked for a count here.
And Lily's already got 1 big blind in there, so she has to call with a pretty wide range of hands here, but she's just making sure that he's as short as she thinks he is.
So Lily waiting to hear the count and crunch the numbers in her head before making her decision. She does make the call with King Jack. So she is going to be behind, but she is live.
2-3-5.
And Ron calling for the 2-3-5 flop, much like Babe Ruth pointing into the left field stands before he steps into the batter's box. Oh, and he's close. The flop is 4-9 deuce.
I'm starting to pray down.
So Ron does pair the 4.
Lily's still looking for a king or a jack. And the turn is the 10 of hearts. That actually gives Lily a couple more outs. She has a gut shot straight draw now, so the queen will also help her.
10 outs for Lily to make a hand to beat Ron. Ron hoping to fade those outs and double up. Everything depends on the river.
And the river's the 7 of diamonds, and Ron is going to double up here. He's probably pretty happy about that. It was looking kind of dicey getting towards the end there.
Well, you've said it a million times, my friend. It's never easy.
Best hand I've had for an hour.
He went into the flop ahead, hit a pair, but still had to sweat through the river. At the end, he's going to double up to just about 770,000 in chips. So action in this hand will begin with Tret, making his 3rd HPT final table. He has 2nd place and a 7th place finish, both from Club 1 Casino in Fresno, California. Another fun tour stop.
Chris DeMacy with 9s and 13 big blinds is going to move all his chips into the middle here. Hoping for some action and a double up so that he could be back in contention. And Mark, unfortunately, wakes up with a bigger pair than him. Jacks for Mark, and Chris is not looking too happy here. He knows he needs to hit a 9. They're just 11 9s in Chris DeMacy's spot usually, but sometimes you just get coolered.
The flop is 10 ace ace with a couple of diamonds. So not the flop Chris was hoping for.
Still looking for that 9.
5 of clubs falls on the turn. So a 9 and only a 9 will save Chris's tournament life here.
The river's not going to do it for Chris. He is going to be eliminated. Chris didn't get much going at this final table, although he started out second in chips, and he's going to go home with just under 17,000.
Well, look at the time. Our hour has expired. What a fun final table we have on our hands. Next time on the HPT, we'll crown our newest champion from right here at the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa. Now, Maria, a lot of drama, some great plays, also, to be honest, some questionable plays. What is your take on this table so far?
I feel like a few of these players aren't really used to being at a final table, and that's probably some of that inexperience that's showing. But there's also still a lot of great players left. Now that we're five-handed, though, the mistakes you make are just much more costly to your stack. So I hope that these players are going to step it up and play their A game.
Well, now, do you think you have what it takes to step it up and play your A game at a nationally televised final table for unreal money? Well, try it then. Log on to hptpoker.com and find an event near you. We tend to have a lot of fun out there. For Maria Ho and James Larson, I'm Fred Bevel. We'll see you next time on the HPT.